Okay, we've returned to open session. We're going to move on to number 17, action item, student discipline, student 12. Superintendent Davis, the hearing officer, took notes during the board's deliberation and has a proposed resolution for the board's consideration.
Okay. The recommendation from the administration was expulsion. Now, therefore, be it resolved that a preponderance of the evidence establishes that on November 15th, 2019, student 12 physically assaulted another student on school premises in violation of Marshall Opportunity High School Student Handbook, page 17 and 18, and section 1310 of the revised school code. The student is suspended until March 11th, 2020. Based on careful consideration of all the following factors, the board determines that suspension is warranted. The student's age, 15 years, 6 months. As of 11/18, the student's disciplinary history, as seen in the disciplinary record. Whether the student has a disability, student had a disability, manifestation was held. It was determined that his behavior was not a manifestation of his condition. The seriousness of behavior, as written up by the incident report, whether the behavior posed a safety risk, the behavior did pose a safety risk to the student, other students, and staff. Whether restorative practices were a better option, parties involved did not cooperate with restorative practices and have been disobedient towards that. Victims do not wish to participate in restorative practice. Whether lesser interventions would address the behavior, lesser interventions were used in previous instances without success. Lesser interventions included progressive discipline, one-on-one administrative conferencing, and restorative practices. In addition to suspension, the student must complete the following: demonstrate successful participation in an appropriate counseling program approved by the superintendent. Summit Point is an approved counseling session. So if there's an open case, let's keep them seeing the Summit Point therapist, right? And that needs to be reported back to us to let us know that he is actively involved in that, okay? Establish that the student not engage in conduct during the period of expulsion that may be viewed by the superintendent as detrimental to the student's continued education in the district. So, young man, here's the deal with that. We know that there's a lot of pressure out there to fight. We know that there's a lot of issues going on out in the community. You have to stay away from that. You don't stay away from that, the courts or the law enforcement gets involved, and you've seen the routine where you get violated on probation and end up back in juvenile home. And if your behavior is going that direction, we'll know that that's happening, right? Complete to the satisfaction of the superintendent all recommendations contained in any psychological or counseling report. So if in through counseling they talk with you, ma'am, and what's the best course of action for them, we want to make sure that they're following through on that. Demonstrate to the satisfaction of the superintendent that the student received educational instruction and cooperatively participated in an educational program during the period of suspension. That is your involvement with the teacher for FAPE, where you're meeting with him at the library. That will continue during your period of suspension, okay? And then finally, the board is asking that an IEP, Jamie, the board is asking, and parent, the board is asking that an IEP be convened prior to March 11th, at which time you can reevaluate and adjust or modify his educational plan accordingly on what's transpiring with this long-term suspension. Mom, you have to request that. For an IEP, for a meeting with special ed. Okay? That concludes what our recommendations are.
I'd make that motion.
Support.
Any discussion? Start with Lisa.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Abstain.
Thank you. That's the end of that.
Now we're going to move on to action item number 18, action item, student discipline hearing, student 13. Student discipline hearing for student 13. Students who are presented to the Board of Education for student discipline hearings have the right to have their hearing conducted in open or closed session. Student 13's parent guardian has requested their student's discipline hearing to be held in open session.
Mrs. Ridley? This is an open session for disciplinary hearing. I will act as the hearing officer for the hearing. Right now, the board has a copy of this packet that you received. This is the first time the board is looking at that packet. They're going to read and catch up on what the recommendations are from the administration. Once that's completed, we'll open the floor up for conversation and questions and presentation by Mr. Wallace. I would like to know who's present today on behalf of this case for student number 13. Anybody else, Mrs. Ridley? I'm sorry, what? Stepfather. Do you have any other witnesses or anybody else that's going to testify on his behalf? His what? Sister and brother. Do they have direct knowledge of what was going on as far as being in the room? Okay. Okay, allow them to go ahead and read, and we'll start as soon as they're ready. You guys ready? Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, so as a hearing officer, we're going to ask Mr. Wallace to present the evidences and his recommendation from this incident. Mr. Wallace?
All right, still hearing for student 13, page 1, you find specific code of conduct violation recommendation. Student 13 specific violations were assault against staff or students, MOHS handbook, page 18, criminal acts, MOHS handbook, page 17, the board shall expel a student 6 or above if the student commits a physical assault as defined by Michigan Criminal Law 1510-3B. 1, against another student on school property, on school bus, or other school-related vehicle, or as a school-sponsored activity or event. The board may modify the expulsion period on a case-by-case basis. Recommendation, 108-day expulsion. 1310B factors are as follows. The student was 16 years, 4 months as of 11/18/2019. They'll have a copy of the disciplinary hearing or the disciplinary history. He was identified as having a disability. He has a specific learning disability, as expression, basic reading, reading comprehension, reading fluency. The manifestation of disability hearing, MDR, was held on 12/2/19. The MDR team consisted of 2 special ed supervisors, a school psychologist, a school social worker, special education teacher consultant, special education case manager, MOHS teacher, MOHS principal. The team determined that the student's behavior was not a manifestation of disability. The behavior didn't pose a risk to others. The behavior posed a safety risk to the student, other staff, or other students and staff. Parties did not participate. Victims did not participate in sort of practice, and lesser interventions for this situation based on past events was not considered.
You're recommending expulsion for 180 days, correct? Okay. In the evidence and the video that you pointed out to us, parents, were they able to see the video? Okay. In the video, did you have evidence that student 13 assaulted a peer? By means of assault, that means he initiated? Were there efforts to try to deter him from assaulting a peer?
Yes, him and his peers were all asked to leave out the normal gym doors, and they did not follow directions. They actually went around me and tried to did not follow directions. They did not leave the gym.
How many times did you see or witness him either directly or during the videotape assault a peer? Multiple. At any point, did he slow down? Did he stop? Did he try to resolve issues? Did he walk away? After it was over. In his behavior record, this current year, has he had any other incidents of assault? Any incidents of fighting?
It was part of the one after school, but he was not a student. I don't believe he was a student. Oh, he was our student then. The one after school after public rec.
This year?
In September, I believe it was.
The MDR indicated that it was not a manifestation of his disability. What have you had him doing since what's transpired since the incident on the 15th?
He was offered FAPE, and we set him up. We gave him the opportunity to do his classes online with us. They denied that and chose to go to a step-up program. So information was provided to enroll in the step-up program.
So we do not have an individual staff member directly involved with him?
We had
Okay. Where has he been since this incident?
He spent some time in the juvenile hall.
How many days, you know? Okay. Mom, how many days did he spend in juvenile? 14. Pardon me? And 30 days tethered. Was he sent to the juvenile home because of a violation with this incident? Yes, okay. Mr. Wallace, anything else you want to say? Okay. Ms. Ridley, how would you like to make a statement? How would you like to proceed with having your witnesses speak?
Started the situation because they was going back and forth, but he walked over to them. Why wasn't nothing done about that?
Do you think that he came directly at your son, or do you think he came as...
Over there to the whole group.
Okay, okay.
Over there towards them, so they knew what was going on. They knew what. I was calling up here, was coming up here, reporting everything that a mother should do. Wasn't nothing done.
Mr. Wallace, do you want to make a statement about him being approached by a peer?
I believe the instance she's talking about, another student dribbled his basketball down while we were trying to get students to leave. He dribbled his ball down and they all exchanged words. That's when I went down there and told them all to leave out that north door. That's when they did leave.
I believe what she's talking about is when he was walking around before the fight, he grouped all the people that threw punches together and they walked down. That's what she's talking about, not the incident itself before the things that happened. You know, y'all saying they instigated the fight. The fight was instigated by somebody going to other people saying, hey, let's get this group of people. That was shown on the tape, but there's nothing done about that. It's just stuff done to them, you know what I'm saying? It's not right. I'm all for it being done right, but what's happening now, that's not right. It was instigated by a whole other group of people. And that should be what we should be looking at. Because she came in months before and was showing messages from Facebook where they were threatening them, saying they was going to do stuff to them. Calls.
To the principal.
She did all that. So she came
Nothing
and
got
did it
done.
out to the school. And that's not being talked about. What's being talked about is the fact they defended themselves. That's what's being talked about. And I don't think that's right. I really don't.
It's a really fine line, though, sir, about defending yourself versus aggressively going after somebody that hadn't hit you yet.
Let me ask you a question. If somebody hits your brother and a group of them jump on your brother, you're going to go grab your brother off, right? It was stated that he tried to grab people off of him and break them up from fighting. It was stated, he stated, he was pulling people off of the fight.
Is
He
it-
didn't want to fight, but he had to.
Is that accurate, Mr. Wallace?
Standing right here in front of y'all, he made the statement. Student 13 pulled people off, he said it.
I heard him say that about student 12. And then from the video, that's what I saw was student 12, not student 13.
Student 12, okay, student 12, he did the same thing, but I'm saying if you're pulling people off the fight, you're not trying to instigate the fight.
I'm not sure.
You're not the aggressor.
Yeah, but I'm not sure we saw that he was actually pulling
Right.
somebody off. We just saw him fighting.
I saw him several times, and I actually saw the guy walking around and people talking. Everybody you seen throw a punch on them, you seen the guy walk to them separately while they were over there playing basketball by themselves. So that's not the aggressor. The aggressor is the person coming towards you.
Well, I
So
think
I just
there's
want to get that statement clarified and correct.
there's a
Because the
couple
aggressor is the
different
person going
parts
after.
in what you're saying, though.
Huh?
There's a couple different parts in what you're saying. So there's one part where we know that there was a whole bunch of stuff going on outside of what happened this day. So we know that.
Right, right.
So then there was also everybody, well, I mean, I'm not gonna say everybody, but there were several groups of people having words with each other. So we know what that's like too. And we'll also say that we have addressed several other students. Most of them have chosen to have their stuff done in closed session, so y'all wouldn't know about that. So just be aware of that part too. We're not just, I mean, obviously, you know, we've had a session with student 12, so we're not just looking at 2 kids. We're looking at as many people as we can look
I
at.
just keep hearing this word, they're the aggressor. I just want to correct it. They're not the.
Well, what we're talking about though is in this video, student 13 runs over to them.
Because
After
his
he's
brother
punched,
is over
after his
there
brother got
getting
punched.
jumped.
That's why he ran over there. That's why I kept trying to
Can't-
point
can't
to
help
y'all
but
at the
sit
top.
around.
While he was pointing at the bottom, I was pointing y'all at the top. His brother was getting punched. He ran over there, yes, to save his brother. So I think y'all need to see that.
Yeah,
And
so
pay
can we
attention to
see it
that.
again? Cause
The
that's not what I
aggressor
saw.
is the one that punched his brother.
I can speak to it, I'd be happy
I
to.
have another question.
Just a minute, let him finish. Let him address that, and then you can follow up, Mr.
I'm
Lee.
not gonna speak to that, and I also show the video, but the situation where they're saying their brother got punched, they're talking about this student right here.
Yeah.
He came back in from the gym, the student who was one of the students that started it, ran at him, I stood between them, they never made contact. Then they jumped on that student who was going after him.
Okay.
Take people's words and you can watch the video. The video shows the man punching. That's the aggressor. That's the one that did the first punch.
No, yeah, I don't think so. Ben, Mr. Wallace, we've seen the video, and when things started taking off seriously and people started aggressively going after each other, we know that words, shouting, fronting off people, that kind of stuff was going on between in particular, two young people. And
That had nothing to do with y'all though, right? Like it was 2 kids that.
But that was squared up between 2 people that had nothing to do with this group of kids. And student 13 aggressively went after one. I get what you're saying about that, but, well, it doesn't, you know, I understand from a family standpoint, you want to make sure that your children, their family, you're all taking care of business for each other. But when you're in a public school setting and something like that's going off and administration's trying to ask people to leave and not get involved in an altercation and people ignore that and continue to go after it, that's a problem.
The other problem is when you only have 2 security guards and none of them kids. It's a law that says you have to have a certain amount of security per child. So let's talk about that too. Since we're talking about issues, let's talk about that.
Well, sir, I'm not familiar with any law like that.
You might want to look it up.
Okay,
Because I know it. I do security. So
okay,
I know.
okay.
So let's talk about that.
And then, I wanna know where's the camera at from the cafeteria, because he told me there was no cameras in the cafeteria where it started at. There's cameras in there.
And they walked away out of the cafeteria.
It's
got
cameras
followed
in
to the
there.
gym.
It started in the
That's what I'm saying. It's a
cafeteria.
lot of underlying stuff y'all don't know about, but they know. And it's not right the way it's being portrayed to y'all.
So I
That's
wanna
not
know
right.
where's the video at from the cafeteria, and if they following them into the gym, where's the other videos at?
Yeah, so we have not seen a video of the cafeteria. We understand there was an awareness that some things were starting to take off in regards to people looking for fights and things like that. That's why the staff members were trying to get things calmed down and get kids separated.
But I was told there was no cameras in the
Yeah, why would you tell a parent there's no camera when you know there's a camera? It's a 360 camera in there.
Okay, so, Mr. Wallace, have you guys looked at any camera in the cafeteria?
So, one, we did not, one, the video in the cafeteria was not functional, 1. 2, there were no assaults that took place in the cafeteria, and I had staff in there. Matter of fact, I was in there right there before everybody left the gym. So,
They walked away. They walked away from the problem and followed them to the gym.
everyone needs to have an opportunity to say their piece. You don't have to argue it down, okay? Because we're not arguing your piece down either. So go ahead.
There were no physical assaults that happened in the cafeteria. Nobody struck anybody. So there wouldn't be any video to show in reference to an assault, which is what I'm asked to show the burden of evidence that provides evidence that assaults happened.
Would it be fair to say that whatever dynamics were going on in the cafeteria was giving you an idea that something was going to go off in the gym?
Absolutely. And that's why we tried to get, before I even talked to their party, I tried to get other parties to leave.
Okay.
Can I say what I saw in the cafeteria? I know there was a lot of talk being cracked.
But you told me there was no cameras in the cafeteria when you were trade
No, I told you there were cameras in the cafeteria.
What did you say?
That there's no camera footage from the cafeteria.
No camera footage. Okay. Let's stay focused here. So, student 13, what would you like to say in your behalf?
They came to us talking and starting to fight. And where? And we got to, some students came up and said, Don, watch your back. Do it for you. Then some other dude said, do it right now, so I can record. We was all in the cafeteria. We got our lunch and we sat down, and then they came up there following us talking. Then we just threw our food away and then we came.
Did you hit someone first before being hit? Huh? You saw your brother getting hit? Yeah, okay. I just need to know where you're coming from on that. So you didn't get hit by somebody, you saw your brother getting hit, and so that's when you attacked. Okay.
So they done dressed it.
Does anyone have any questions at all?
I don't have necessarily a question, but what I do want to say is, one of the things that I struggle with in this kind of stuff is the use of criminal terminology when we're talking about kids. However, that is what we have to do. So when we are looking at that type of stuff, that's one of the things that Dr. Davis is talking about, like, did somebody hit you first? Some of us have a different understanding of what that means in terms of whether or not you have a right to hit somebody, and I absolutely get that, and I think that, we're starting to understand that together. However, that's just the way it works. Unfortunately, when young man, you knew you was already on probation. Did I say that you shouldn't? Okay, what I'm saying to you is, what it looked like, it was a big mess, is what it looked like to me. It was a big mess. And it also looked like your brother didn't get hit until after the big mess started. But it looked like he was about to get hit. That's what I saw. So when you turn around, I watched the video. But what I'm saying, listen to what I'm saying to you, young man.
Young man, take some order, sir.
Listen to what I'm saying to you. Your dad gonna get you. So, okay, this is what I'm saying to you. What I'm saying to you is, when you in a situation like that, okay? When you're in a situation like that, you don't always know exactly what's happening. And when I'm saying you, I ain't talking about you personally. I'm saying anybody. If I was in that situation and I turned around and I saw my sister, I might think exactly what you thought. That's not what I'm saying. What we're saying now is, what are we going to do to move forward to make sure you get on the track that you need to be on? And one of the things that I think I want to hear from you is, like, what is it that you want to do moving forward? Like, this incident happened, it was a whole bunch of people involved. What are we going to do to make sure that this stuff don't happen again, in terms of individually? Because we can't handle 15 other people. All we can talk about is what we gonna do. So what can we do as an administration to get Trey on the track he needs to be on to make sure he can get his tail out of high school?
as a mother, let this man know, the principal, what was going on.
Yeah, I hear you, I hear you. But like
Yeah.
Mr. Williams already
But he
said
didn't do
once,
nothing
there's
at all.
15 or
But
20
now
kids,
they done aggressive
right?
because
There's only
the
so
board
much
was
they can
going to
do.
walk
At
off of
some
it.
point, the kids gotta be able to take responsibility for their own actions. Not just Trey. That's not what I'm saying. Don't hear what I'm not saying. Not just Trey. I'm saying every single one of them. And if you were able to hear, you would have known I had this conversation with every single child that came in front of us. Because it hurts my heart to see this young man so angry with a tether on his foot at 16. Where do you think he's gonna be next? Do you know what I'm saying? That's what I care about. I don't give a damn about the rest of that stuff. I'm looking at this man who's so angry he can't even express himself, even to you as his father. Do you know what I'm saying? So what is gonna happen to him tomorrow? That's what I care about. I don't care about all that other nonsense. When he come to you and he telling you somebody fussing and doing all of that stuff with you, what are you gonna say to him then? Are you gonna say, baby, go ahead and do all of that stupid stuff so you can wind up in prison? Or are you gonna say, what can we do to keep you from going back to prison?
Ms. Gamble, I hear what you're saying, but we did all that. We told
I'm
him
talking
not
about
to
the,
fight.
okay,
Yeah, hold
so
on,
now
hold on,
what are
hold
we
on,
going to
hold on.
do?
We told him not to fight.
What are we going to do?
That's what we're here for.
Okay.
We need y'all help.
So
If
what
he's
is
coming to school,
step
he has to be
step
safe
up?
in the school environment,
What
right?
is Step Up doing?
Okay, listen what I'm saying. If he's coming to school and doing what he's supposed to do, he's supposed to be safe in the school environment, right?
Yes,
So
him
security
and
should have been
100
on point.
other
When
kids.
a parent steps up
Yeah.
and tells the school, hey, he's being picked with, bullied with, social media, and he's not fighting anybody then, it should be something done about it. See what I'm
Yeah.
saying? This is what we're telling you. Hold on, Tiffany.
It's not gonna be. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Like, it's
Now,
hard
when
to
kids take
put
it
that
upon
in a box.
themselves to walk out of the cafeteria because somebody's saying they're picking on them, you know how hard that is for a kid to walk
Yes.
away from his peers?
I do.
But he did that.
I do.
He got followed in the gym, picked with, then they punched his brother. I don't know what tape you saw. I saw the big guy in the white shirt clearly walk over there and cold cock the dude right up at the top of the key. And then he ran over there. So when you got kids walking away being adults, because we do get at it, what do you do when you're back to the corner? What else can you do?
So what about, or I shouldn't even say September, what got him on probation?
The same situation, baby. Texting,
A bunch of kids,
picking,
social media.
and that's the biggest thing. That social media is terrible. I
It
agree
is.
with that, but that's the
It
thing.
is
You
what
know
it
what I'm saying?
is.
The thing is, and we even sat down with a counselor. We came in here, sat down with the kids, talked. I believe it was, we talked. They had a heart-to-heart, they hugged. Everything was good. These two, the student, him, and the other guy, Raylan, they was cool. They was talking. Then when Raylan got around his friends, and they got to talking to him, that's when he went to start bullying you.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. It wasn't like, I hate to hear that word aggressive.
Yeah,
Like
that's
they were
what
being
I
aggressive. I hate to hear
understand that.
because they walked away several times. You're not an aggressor if you walk away several times.
I understand.
I don't know what dictionary book you see that in. You're not an aggressor when you walk away several times. And not only that, I hate the fact that you guys are not being given the whole story because you're putting a blind right now. Because this has been going on for a while. We as parents have stepped up. Him as a child has even stepped up and had a heart-to-heart meeting with the counselor and the student because he didn't want to fight. He wanted to get through school, graduate early, and go work.
So how is that part going? Like, is he still seeing a counselor? Is that one thing that is still happening? Okay. But what's the step up? What's the step up?
We go to counseling, we doing we met with the lady today.
And that's for the step up thing? Is that classes? That's what I'm trying to figure out. I don't know what that is.
Special educational teacher.
Okay, so that's something he can actually get some credits?
He's doing faith with us until or unless they choose to go with Step Up. Step Up is another academic provider that provides school online to students.
And,
If he chooses to stay with us, he has to go to the library to access the internet and the computer, which is where his classes are offered. He will meet with his faith teacher to do that, okay?
But I'm choosing not to stick with him because he's not coming back here.
so what is the plan? Do you know? Like, in terms of his education?
Different school, he's gonna do online class, I'm gonna do when he's able to go there. I made the mistake by sending him here.
So what about the counseling piece? Is that something that you're gonna stick with
He
too?
goes to summer camp.
Okay.
Can I add one more saying? Like, I don't feel like it's fair either, that the other students are just allowed to freely walk back in like they didn't do nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like, just free, just, come on, if he's being punished for what he did, and I'm all for that, you being punished for your actions, where's the punishment for everybody else? You know what I'm saying? Like, and not only the students, what's going on with the faculty? Why is it 2 people in there trying to stop a mob? You know what I'm saying? Like, that, it don't make sense. A kid could have got killed in there. It's a law. You have to have a certain amount of security per child. So they're not letting nobody down. I feel like the school as a whole let them down. And that's how I feel. Because it's not right. I feel like my son-in-law I feel like he was in danger. I feel like his brother was in danger. If somebody's writing you saying, hey, look, this is what they're going to do, and they catch you in the cafeteria and say, hey, I'm going to punch your brother, and we've been telling this to the staff, what else can we do? What else can we do? What else can he do? But tell, you know what I'm saying? What else can we do? And if they're looked down on for coming to the teachers telling.
I made police
But
reports.
we're doing it. So, I mean, what else can we do? I don't get it. I really don't understand how he's being looked at as the aggressor, the attacker, or this and the third, when he did everything he could do to put it out there that, hey, it's some bullying going on in this school, and I'm part of being bullied. Basically, these are 18-year-old kids, and this is a 15-year-old boy, 16-year-old boy. I don't see a grown man is picking on the child, but he's the aggressor. Come on now. I don't get that. I don't understand that word.
Mr. Wallace, do you have documentation of his concerns about being harassed or bullied?
I have documentation from both sides, making equal, have the same dialogue.
And what was the interventions?
We've always talked to the students, we always, like I said, some of the stuff too is the social media stuff. They had somebody's name on it, but I also, there were several times I asked for documentation or screenshots, and I didn't get it also.
I haven't showed you any. We still got
I
it.
didn't say you didn't show me, I said there was times I asked for it, and it was not provided.
Police have some stuff. I made
Officer,
police
what's her name?
reports.
Officer Kelly.
I told his probation officer when I was contacting them also.
The same day it happened, my dad
Wasn't
had
nothing
just
done.
Oh yeah, their father came up to the school 10 minutes before the fight kicked off and said, hey, my son just called me and said some people bullied him. Nothing was done. You get an alert like that to a school, you're supposed to jump on it,
We did.
regardless.
Nothing was done.
Evidently you didn't, because they still got attacked.
We did.
Nothing was
Somebody
done.
should have been sent home or something should have been done, and they would have never got attacked. But you did it. You failed them. That's what you did. You failed them.
Okay. Anything else?
Parents get no calls about the fight or nothing. No
The
parents.
kids had to call us and let us know a
Yeah,
fight happened.
I got called, I was at work. The kids called me.
What kind of staff is that? The kids have to call and say, hey, we just got jumped.
Get no
That should have been a call from the
principals,
office.
teachers, nothing. Called the
Hey,
parents.
man.
The kids called.
They were in the office before I even got to the office. Every single one of my staff was in that gym. That was our first priority, and I was in that, by the time I got to the front office, she was already here.
Because they called me. The kids
Right,
called.
right.
I know.
The kids called.
And the staff were busy trying to resolve the issues.
Staff in the office.
I was gonna say, I seen
It was like
two,
three
maybe
people in
three
the office
staff
with
in the gym. That's all I saw. Is that all the staff we have here? 'Cause that's definitely not adequate. How many students do y'all cater to? That's not adequate at all. What kind of training do the security have here? You have to train security. They can't just put on a shirt and say, hey, I'm security. Well, I mean, come on. We're dealing with lives here, y'all. We're dealing with lives. These kids could have been killed. Then we wouldn't have been sitting here having this kumbaya. We'd have been at somebody's gravesite. And I'm not even only talking about him. I'm talking about another child could have been killed. So what concern, that's the concern I really have right now. Even if he get pulled out of this school, what's gonna happen to the next child? Come on.
Anything else to offer? Any other questions do you have?
Have any of the students we've disciplined, are they,
Pardon
anybody
me?
back, is anybody that we've disciplined back in school yet? They shouldn't be.
Anyone?
Person never kicked out.
Everyone knows, never kicked out. I got word that 2 of the boys supposed to be coming back to school, not expelled. Yeah.
All the students that were identified in that video were brought to the board, and various disciplines have been handed out. Any other questions before we go into?
We have to do our deliberation.
Yeah, we have to do it here.
So we have to do our deliberation in open session, so.
Yep.
So the recommendation in front of us is expulsion for 180 days.
Okay, testimony is over. We're going to do deliberations and make a determination and a motion for action.
Y'all can wait if you want to.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're in open session, sorry, yes. So again, the recommendation is 180-day expulsion. Any discussion?
The two questions we're trying to resolve right now is, was there evidence to show that the student number 13 actually did what he's accused of doing? And two, what is the appropriate disciplinary action? Recommendation in front of you from the administration is expulsion for 180 days.
For sake of discussion, I'm going to suggest that we do the March suspension again with the same kind of conditions that he would continue to get, stay with the various services that they talked about.
This is your deliberations, not mine.
That's my suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Can you guys talk more about,
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
can you just talk more about your decision-making?
Like what we're thinking should go into those conditions?
No, just about why suspension for a marking period versus expulsion, just of what you're thinking.
Well, it's not suspension for a marking period. He's been out of school since November 15th, so that's longer than a marking period.
So I guess what I meant then was until the next marking period. That was what we had done before, so beginning of the fourth marking period.
Oh, that's what that date specifically was? I thought it was 180 days, but okay.
No, what you were talking about of, you're saying that you would like him to be suspended until the start of the next marking period. That would be March 10th.
Correct, with the opportunity to meet certain conditions that we need to discuss what those conditions should be.
So,
I guess from my perspective, it has become hard to distinguish who started it, who is the aggressor, and I'm listening to what the parents say, and I appreciate what they've had to say. Again, keep in mind that they're 15 and 16-year-old kids. I hope that they've gotten the message. They've already the tether, and they've been in juvenile home. They've paid some consequences for this. I hope they've got the message. I don't see the value in keeping them out of school anymore. I mean, I'm always other students' safety, administrator safety is always paramount. I just don't see the value in them being out any longer at this point. So that's my thought.
No, that's fine.
Be glad to discuss if you want.
I'm just trying to think of the other ones, trying to compare, and some of them were a while ago, and, want to be fair and treat all the kids similarly. I'm just trying to think about how his behavior fits in compared to some of the others, and that it doesn't seem like he randomly went and hit some other person, that some have, but he was also hitting people who were not hitting him, like, he could pull people off, and so I'm just trying to figure out where that is. Like, it seems different if somebody was hitting you and then you fight back.
I have a younger brother, and I understand where they're coming from, and again, is that the right thing to do? I can judge at age 50 what I should and shouldn't do. I don't know if 15-year-olds, with adrenaline and in that situation can make the same judgment that I can at this point. This is just a big mess, and part of what I'm having problems is we've had. It's been a while since we considered some of the first ones, and so it's hard to figure out which student was doing what and who was throwing punches, and there was a whole bunch of fighting going on, a whole bunch of mess.
I think the delineation that you made was if a student initiated contact against someone regardless of their reason, that was a little more egregious than if they were hit first, involved in a fight, and continued on. That was the delineation you made for long-term suspension versus expulsion. And then other mitigating circumstances.
Yeah.
It's kind of a gray area, but
It
in this
is.
way, he was not struck first, that he struck somebody else first instead of pulling that child off. So, I mean, I understand, you know, that he was trying to defend his brother, but you're trying to think of, like, what's going to be different next time? Like, how do we know that there's not going to be a next time?
Mhm.
So, okay, so maybe then, is this the situation where we discuss expulsion with the opportunity to reinstate?
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
So we could say, expulsion, but if you meet this criteria, which is, you know, getting educational credit, some sort of progress in class, either online or through the other program that they were talking about he might do, continue counseling, which Mom said he's been doing for a little bit of time already, and I can't remember, no more trouble, that was another thing, like no more incidents with, like run-ins with the law, that he possibly could come and say, at a certain date, I've met these criteria and I'm asking to be able to come back to school.
Mom, I need to ask you a question. Didn't you say that you had other plans though already in the works for him? So that's not something that you are.
I feel like I used to like the people that work here. I'm not gonna lie.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to clarify. I thought I heard you say that earlier. I just wanted to clarify. Okay.
Until finding my two kids in the school,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. I thought I heard you say that. So I'm not even sure how that plays into this then. If her plans are to do something else,
Well, we
then
don't-
we need to make a decision.
Like just expulsion with.
Well,
Well, I mean, it
We have
depends on
a-
conditions, because if they change their.
we have a behavior that we have to address as a
Right.
board.
Right.
And so we have to address that and put closure on it.
Right.
And whether the parent wants to take them out of the school or not, we have to act according to our authority as a board. Now, how you determine that, you can do a long-term suspension. You can do an expulsion for the remainder of the year to then allow them the opportunity to be able to do those things that Ms. Gamble talked about and be in a position to ask for or be enrolled in another school system for the fall. There's a lot of different ways that you can go through that determination, but you have to decide based on the case right now, what is your action going to be? Was there evidence to show that he did what he was accused of doing, and what is the appropriate discipline? Whether he's with us tomorrow or not, whether he's receiving FAPE from our staff for the next 3 months or not, that has to be determined. And expulsion anymore, Ms. Gamble, Shauna, is 61 days to 180 days. The law allows us to expel at 61 days or above. And it allows us to expel permanently out of a school system based on the level of the crime or the level of the behavior, or it allows us to do expulsion with a condition to be requesting reinstatement. So those are the options.
So we could expel up to that March date, have the hearing. Difference is to have the hearing.
Yeah, the difference would be having a hearing for reinstatement. Yep. Because technically, he's been out since the 15th of November. And that should be 61 days to March 11th, if that's what you're talking about. But you'd have to do a convening of a reinstatement committee to see if he's meeting the requirements that you guys set down.
As opposed to if he's suspended, he just automatically comes back on March.
Yeah, suspension doesn't require reinstatement, he just comes back on the 11th of March.
But we've been doing require conditions.
We've added conditions to that, but those are to be informed along the way. And as we did the last time, we would convene a meeting, an IEP meeting, to talk about any kind of modifications required for their education plan. Pardon me?
If the boxes are ticked as far as what needs to be done, it's really your call.
Right.
There's no committee.
No, we would just ask the parents to show evidence that those things have been followed through on. I or my delegate.
So if we did an expulsion until March 11th and had certain criteria, they'd have to demonstrate that even if they chose to go to another school? Would that be what would lift the expulsion then?
Well, what they could, even with an expulsion, you can go, if it's not a permanent expulsion, you can go out and find a school system interested in taking you.
Okay, so that doesn't preclude anything.
Now, some districts will refuse until the reinstatement's officially made. Other ones know that if he's eligible for reinstatement, they would go ahead and make that determination independent of us. But for an expulsion or a suspension, he could not be on school grounds, period, during that period of time that he's out of school. And if he's going to do FAPE services with us, he has to do it down at the library.
So if they went tomorrow to Springport, and Springport, you're saying Springport wouldn't take them until our...
Springport might, because he's not permanently, he wouldn't be permanently expelled.
It's up to Springport.
And at this point, if you suspend, it would be a long-term suspension. So Springport could, under those conditions, say, yeah, we'd be willing to take him, but that's, the only thing we would do is just simply say there was an incident, we had to make a board decision.
So I guess for you guys, that would allow you some flexibility if you'd like to do that.
So is he receiving, excuse me, is he receiving special ed services here?
I mean, if they have to be shifted, that was one of the questions that we asked. Mrs. Hartley would like to do the service here at OHS for Mary's in the building. There is other FAPE services going on at the library, so we were running out of time, because part of probation is that we could not do the sessions together. So Mrs. Hartley had elected to do services here, and you guys have a schedule, I also got it up in my head, but.
So what have you?
I'm just trying to get this clear. If he's suspended, he can still access services.
Yes, FAPE services.
With expulsion, he can't.
No, he can, but it'd have to be off school grounds for sure. Or we can make a, I mean, I think it's either here or there. You got to decide on, did the evidence demonstrate he did what he was accused of doing? And secondly, what is the appropriate discipline? And if you think the appropriate discipline is to be out until March 11th at the earliest, then you can determine to do that either through a short-term expulsion or you can do it through a suspension, long-term suspension. And we can still say that these are requirements for him to be considered coming back into school. And then the family would have to demonstrate that he met those requirements. Or he would have to demonstrate that he met those requirements.
I think I would lean that way.
Which way would that be?
With the suspension, with conditions.
Which is where Richard started.
I'm fine with that as well.
Would you say, though, that it's consistent with what we've done with other kids? Because I feel like
To tell you, I'm having trouble keeping track of what we're doing at this point with the different.
So I think we did expulsion with conditions, though not permanent, but with conditions. And so tell me if I'm right. What you're saying is you're concerned about him having access to the services that he needs, partly because of space and time that's going on at the library. So would we be able to allow him to access those services if we do the expulsion, which is kind of been the norm, would he be able to have a set time and place that he could access those services here, given these circumstances?
We could create that if it was after school with authority or authorization for the administrator. We could do that, because he can't be here when students are on school grounds, that kind of stuff, and he can't be here socially. It's got to be for a particular reason, and he's got to be released after that particular reason. And if he has any other instance whatsoever with similar behaviors out in the community or while he's on school grounds, he'd have to be brought back in and under another violation. He would be recommended for expulsion, most likely permanent.
Likely will be a violation of probation as well.
Okay.
So I would just lean more towards expulsion because I feel like that's fit more with where we've done with the other people. But if everybody else wanted suspension, I would be okay with that too. I just want to make sure that we, for similar cases.
Right, that's the biggest thing. And just circumstances being as they are, had he been the first student we saw, maybe that would have been the case and he would have been able to access. But given the fact that it's the last one, that might be, I think we'd have a legitimate justification for saying this is why we're doing long-term suspension with these conditions versus expulsion, so he has access to those services that he needs.
So deliberation-wise, are we back to long-term suspension through March 10th? or 11th?
Someone needs to make a motion on that.
I would make that motion.
Actually, do we make a motion, or do we tell you and then you read it like we've done
I mean, it
before?
would be long-term suspension until March 10th, and then the other conditions that you'll read.
Let me draw this up for a second.
I like it better when you draw these up as opposed to us having to read them.
Everybody's good? Any other questions?
Hold on.
I'm going to read my piece.
Yeah, go ahead.
Following board deliberations, Superintendent Davis, the hearing officer, took notes during the board's deliberations and has a proposed resolution for the board's consideration.
Ms. Rogers, is it legitimate for us to ask, I should have asked this question in the last one, but we need the parent to be asking for an IEP to be convened prior to March?
I think it's good to recommend that the parents, if they feel like that's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it should be ordered as part of a requirement. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So I'll make sure that wording's in the previous and this one. Okay, so I'm ready to read the resolution. Here's the resolution you guys can vote on, okay? Now therefore be it resolved that a preponderance of the evidence did establish that on November 15th, 2019, student 13 physically assaulted another student on school premises in violation of the Marshall Opportunity High School Student Handbook, page 17 and 18, and section 1310 of the revised school code. The student is suspended until March 11th, 2020. The student, hold on a second, I missed that one. In addition to the suspension, the student must complete the following: demonstrate successful participation in an appropriate counseling program approved by the superintendent that includes both group and individual counseling. The counseling sessions that you say that he's involved in with Summit Point is acceptable, but we are going to need to find some, you're going to have to demonstrate to us that he's actually involved in that, right? That he's participating. Establish that the student is not engaged in conduct during the period of expulsion that may be viewed by the superintendent as detrimental to the student's continued education in the district. Specifically, he cannot be involved in any other assaultive behavior or fighting behavior, either in the community or on school grounds. So he's going to have to really buckle down here and make sure he's making good decisions. Complete to the satisfaction of the superintendent that all recommendations contained in any psychological or counseling report are being satisfied. Demonstrate to the satisfaction of the superintendent that the student received educational instruction and cooperatively participated in an educational program during the period of suspension, which is the FAPE services. And finally, the board recommends an IEP be convened through the parent's request for the purposes of considering his academic education plan and if there's any adjustments that need to be made as he comes back into school.
I'd make that motion.
Support.
Any discussion? Start with Carrie.
Yes.
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 Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.